Hi, everybody. Welcome to our very first Facebook Live, Digging Deep. My name is Tara.
I'm Cody, and I'm the horticulturist. I'm going to be answering your questions today.
All right, so what are you most excited for this season?
Oh, this season? Are we talking like in my home garden or here at Veseys? Because there's a lot to uncover there.
Let's start with your home garden.
Home garden, we're going to be doing a lot of hardscaping this year. We're going
hmm
to be doing a lot of renovating of like garden edges, amending soils, and then in the vegetable garden, we're going to be cover cropping this year.
Yeah, I'm most excited. I planted so much milkweed last year for the butterflies, and I'm hoping that it all comes up. Like, I
Yeah.
planted thousands of seeds.
We're going to be putting some new perennial beds into. We're doing lots of milkweed as well.
Nice. And what are you excited about this year at Veseys?
Well, I can't give away too much, but we have a lot of new flower crops we've never had before that we're trialing.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone should stay tuned for the next year or two, and then we're gonna, have all those new wonderful flowers.
Nice. So we're 1st of March.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a zone 5B here.
Yep.
What kind of things do you already have planted?
So right now we have perennials planted, geraniums, pansies, any early cool season crops that can go out mid-May, and now we're just starting our petunias now.
And is there anything that it's almost too late to start?
Perennials would be one. If you haven't already started like onions, leeks, celery, now is the time to do so. It's pushing it a little bit now.
And when are we planting ours?
We are planting ours next week. So all of our trial seed just arrived. They're all going to be going in then. Um, Lots of fun. It's going to be exciting.
Nice. Oh, I see Susan is watching. Hi, Susan. All right. So I got a question here from Sylvie. How much water should I be giving my seeds while germinating?
So you want to give your seeds enough water that the soil stays moist, but you don't want it so wet that like you can see water pooling on the soil surface. You want it to, drain after a day, re-water it. Once it germinates, then you can cut back that water and let the soil dry out more between watering.
Right. And should all of your seeds be covered with the humidity dome or plastic when you're germinating?
It depends what crops you're using. I don't cover ours with a dome for like I don't use it on perennials, onions, leeks, like the cool weather crops. But like certainly like petunias, geraniums, that sort of thing I do.
Nice. And what happens if your seeds dry out too much?
If your seeds dry out too much, you either need to bottom water them if they are going to bounce back. If they're not going to bounce back or germinate, then you just need to start more. And that happens. That happens to me too.
And what happens if they're too wet?
They're too wet. If they're staying too wet, you can introduce like a desktop fan or a USB fan or something to get some more airflow going. But after that, it's just cutting back the water. That's the best thing you can do.
Right. Another question from Sylvie. What is the best way to deter or get rid of moles in a garden?
Moles in the garden. So one of the things you can do is start introducing bird-friendly like infrastructure, like bird houses, bird feeders, bird baths, that sort of thing. And then another thing you could do is start to do like some strong scented plants, dill, marigold, lavender, that sort of thing. And after that, if you don't see anything, you can start bringing in blood meal that you amend soil with, because it does smell like blood. It does keep critters like squirrels and moles and such that aren't carnivores out of your garden because they think there's trouble around.
Right. What about capsicum? Is that a good option too?
Yep, absolutely.
We do have a question on our live. What is a good, easy veggie to start growing for a beginner?
Garlic. Hands down, garlic.
Ah.
You get it in the fall or spring, you put it in the soil, you forget about it, and then when the tops are about 2/3 green the following August, September, you pull it out and it's done. That's it.
And you get to eat the scapes.
Yep.
That's my favorite part.
Absolutely. Easiest thing, you plant it and you forget about it. And 10 months later, you have garlic.
Another question on our live. How high should I have grow lights? Never used lights before, and they're starting milkweed today.
Starting milkweed today, that's exciting. You want to go 3 or 4 inches. You don't want to go much more than that. They might start to stretch and elongate. You don't want to get closer because you could easily burn the leaves.
Yeah, and it's good to use lights that you can like raise them up as they grow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's go to another question from email. Pat says, can raspberries be grown in close proximity to other raspberry plants? And if not, how far should varieties be relocated?
So you can grow raspberries close to each other. Even if there is some cross-pollination going on, that's only going to affect the next generation of seed. So if you're harvesting and keeping the seed from the current year's berries, that's only going to affect next year's harvest.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just eating the fruit, you're not saving the seeds, you're going to be fine. You can have them all next to each other.
And would saving the seeds be the best way to propagate them, or should you do it a different way?
I always like buying new seeds or new plants because those always come disease free and clean. You know what you're getting.
Right.
Especially with a lot of our stuff are all hybrids. So if you're saving a lot of the seeds, you don't know what you're getting the year after. If you're saving seeds from a red raspberry and you're planting those the next year, you could get like a yellow raspberry, which you
Right.
don't want.
And the flavor could be off too, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Awesome. Question from Debbie. How soon after geraniums have sprouted can you put them under light?
Right away. They germinate so fast. Actually, ours this spring, I planted them on like a Thursday or Friday, and I came in the following Monday, and they were all germinating. So
Right.
I was very happy that I had lights on timer all weekend for them.
Yeah, and we just posted a picture of those, I think, yesterday, of those geraniums that you planted. They've grown so much since like February 12th.
Yeah, they're just taking right off.
Another question from our live. What is a good type of lettuce to grow, and can you grow it in a pot?
You can grow lots of lettuces in a pot. I think it depends on what your use is going to be. Iceberg, is good for mostly for like burger sandwiches, like good for crunch, not so much for salads. Romaine's kind of universal. You can use it for whatever. I like butterheads and like leafy greens because you can use those or whatever. But there's more colors and flavors and textures that you can use with leaf lettuce.
And you can be starting your lettuce now, right, and grow it indoors?
Absolutely. We have some down in our store growing right now. I've been eating it on my sandwiches for lunches every day.
And lettuce is one of those things that doesn't like the heat, so you can plant it out a little earlier than other vegetables?
Yeah, a little bit early, so probably 2 weeks before your last frost. Yeah.
And when would you do your last planting of lettuce in your garden?
Last planting of lettuce, I would probably do that even late August. If I were growing at home, I wouldn't have any growing midsummer because they might, bolt and go to flower right away.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do it around August, then, end of September, October, I'll have some nice heads to harvest.
Nice. Good for succession planting.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Monica asks, what's the best type of soil to plant carrots?
You want a nice sandy soil, and it has to be free of pebbles and rocks.
And what happens if there's pebbles and rocks?
If there's pebbles and rocks, that carrot that's going down and hits one of those, and it's going to either stop if it's big enough, or it's going to go whoop and grow right around. You're going to have a nice hook in your root.
Yeah, and they'll like spread their legs and
Yeah.
look really funny.
They're still fun to eat. They're just not a carrot that you get from the store.
Right, absolutely. Still delicious.
Yeah.
Let's see. Growing corn varieties close to one another. This is a good one.
This is a really good one. So there's lots of different categories of corn. There's super sweet, which are called SH2.
Mm-hmm.
There's normal sugary. There's sugary enhanced. There's normal sugary. Typically, if you're growing corn, you want to stay within those categories. So like if you're cross-pollinating a super sweet with a normal sugary, your super sweet corn's not going to be super sweet anymore. It's going to be quite awful.
Yeah, really starchy.
It'll be very starchy. Might even be a little bit hard. It just won't be good.
Yeah, we put up an infographic showing like the results of cross pollination, where one of our yellow corns was too close to a red corn, and you could see that kernel on the plant that was pollinated by the red one had changed that kernel to red.
Even a few years ago, we were doing some ornamental corn in the trials,
Mm-hmm.
and I had it as far away as possible from the super sweets, and it's still cross pollinated. It was interesting because it was ornamental.
Mm-hmm.
We had some kernels that were blue and like what was supposed to be a yellow corn.
Now, did it change the taste of those kernels?
It was not good.
Yeah.
It was not good.
What about the best fertilizers and soil to use for an above ground veggie garden?
Best soil. So you can usually, I would say there's no one good soil you can use. Usually the best soils are ones that you can amend. So like you can start with like a peat moss base soil, which would be like Pro Mix. And then after that, you might be adding vermiculite, you might be adding compost or manure, more perlite, sand, whatever to amend the soil.
All right, we got another question. Bought a home on 2.7 acres. Anyone know who to contact to identify plants on a property? And how to manage them. They have been neglected for many years and overgrown.
So we can do a little bit of that here, but if it's a lot of plants, you're better off reaching out to any provincial organizations or any provincial like forestry organizations. They would be the best bet to help you.
Yeah, and even sometimes using like Google Lens or some sort of app on your phone to, take a picture and maybe help you identify it. How would you go about handling something that was overgrown?
Handling something that was overgrown, I would start by cutting it right back to the ground. Remove it all out. What regrows is great, and what doesn't, you can start new again. You always hear lots of people, they might have like an overgrown like vineyard or an orchard or something. Prune really hard, and then
Yeah.
it'll bounce back.
Another question from our live: what are some must-have tools and equipment to help plant and tend to the garden?
So other than some, like there's hard rakes, trowels, they're the standard stuff. I really like having an electric cultivator. They
Mm-hmm.
make weeding so much easier, especially when I'm here for like 8 or 10 hours a day and I go home to my garden.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be crawling around on my hands and knees after I've been here all day in the summer.
yeah.
So I just take the electric cultivator, take 15 minutes, I run up and down my rows really quick, done, weed free.
My favorite tool this past summer was getting to use the drill attachment that we have.
Yeah,
That's
that
for
was
bulbs.
great.
We planted our everything with it: our tomatoes, our peppers, our watermelons, even like corn transplants. That drill is so handy.
Yeah, the drill auger was great this summer.
Yeah, and we planted all of our bulbs with it.
Yep.
Let's see. What would be eating my beets? I did notice a lot of white butterflies over my garden last summer. Would they eat them?
Okay, so the white butterflies that are around, it's hard to say without seeing a picture what they are. If you've had some brassicas like cabbage, broccoli, that thing around, it could be imported cabbage moth. But if you have some pictures around, or maybe this season coming up, if you see them again, take some pictures, send them in to us, and I will identify them, and then we'll get back to you.
Yeah. Right. So I think we're caught up. Oh, okay. To manage azalea, can I cut to ground before they send new shoots?
No, I wouldn't cut that back to ground. Yeah, don't do that. Your azaleas always set buds in the fall. So by cutting that back after that for the spring, you're getting rid of all that new growth and you might just end up killing the plant.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Fruit trees, best practices to increase pollination for more fruit.
Planting wildflowers is the best thing you can do. Having the bees around is what's going to pollinate all the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Throw down some wildflower seeds, plant some echinacea, even some annuals like calendula, like anything that you can get bees to where the fruit trees are, that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And probably making sure that you have, if they require another variety to help pollinate.
Yeah, absolutely. So for cross pollination for fruits, you just need two things. They have to be in the same genus and they have to be flowering at the same time. So if we're talking blueberries, you just need two varieties that are flowering at the same time. So typically, like in our catalog, we might say early, mid, and late. For the example, you would need two varieties that say they flower mid. Yeah.
Right. And what are some good companion plants?
Ooh, companion plants.
First, we'll go back. What is companion planting?
So companion planting is having other plants in the garden that'll help others grow or deter pests or whatnot. My favorite is peas. If you're planting it with some corn, so peas only get, typical peas, 24 inches might be the max they're going to grow. There's a few exceptions, but 24 inches. If you plant that with some corn, within your corn rows, your peas are going to come earlier than your corn, so you can have a nice harvest of peas. They're going to fix nitrogen, so they're pulling nitrogen from the atmosphere, depositing it in the soil, so it's going to sit there. Once your peas are done, they're going to be overgrown by the corn, and then the corn's going to use all that nitrogen the peas put in the soil to grow.
Right. And what about for flowers? What would be a good companion plant?
So good companion plants, I like a lot of the strong scented flowers, like back to the mole thing. Marigolds, lavender, dill, anything strong scented to keep pests away, that sort of thing.
And what would you co-plant with your tomatoes?
With my tomatoes, I don't know if I would co-plant anything. Tomatoes are pretty aggressive growers and they require a lot of nutrients and a lot of water. So if you start companion planting with them, and they're going to start pulling away nutrients from those.
Oh, right. For a beginner gardener, what would you suggest for me to start for a veg garden in my backyard?
In your backyard. So really, it's all up to the grower what they want to have. Garlic is probably one of the easiest things you can start with. After that, you want something quick growing and usually high yielding, so something like snap beans or peas.
One of the best pieces of advice we got when we were starting our first garden is like grow what you eat. Like if you don't like beets, like don't grow beets.
Yeah.
Like pick a few things that you really like. Start small. If you put in,
Start small.
if you
Oh,
put in a
yes.
huge garden, you're gonna realize like how quick those weeds show up.
It gets overwhelming so quickly come end of August, September. Like everything's overgrown, weeds are taking over, there's fruit that needs to be picked everywhere, and you just can't do it all in a day.
Yeah, so definitely start small.
Yeah.
Another question: are the light gardens you sell good for maintaining African violets?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're good for everything. I mean, we use our indoor lights to grow like houseplants in the winter,
Mm-hmm.
lettuce. They're really great all year.
Like we only use ours for seed starting, but like you don't have to stop there. Like you could easily grow like geraniums and stuff underneath them all year round. It's just we don't because we're moving outside. So
Right.
yeah,
Light gardens are like a gateway. It's
absolutely.
Like, you're like
Yeah.
suddenly you have
And you
your
can
like
fit
racks filled.
so much under some of those like 3-tier light gardens as well.
Oh my goodness. Another question about companion planting. Where did it go? What's a good companion plant for pepper plants?
For pepper plants, again, back to the tomato question, I wouldn't put a whole lot with them. You don't want to shade them out, take away sunshine. You don't want to take resources away from them. You have a lot of experience in peppers. Like, what would you think?
I think peppers are good on their own, but I'd probably put basil with it. I think it wouldn't necessarily add to it, but it might deter a few pests.
Yeah, and then like if you want to make something with peppers or basil, it's right there ready to go.
Yeah, because like the peppers aren't going to overgrow what's next to it. Even marigolds would go well with it.
Yeah.
Kim asks, what's the best for a container garden? Lettuce?
You absolutely do lettuce. There are so many options with container garden, and container garden isn't just like container gardening, in-ground gardening. Like
Right.
they overlap quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
The only things I wouldn't recommend for containers are like perennial plants you need to overwinter because it's just so hard to overwinter anything in something that's above ground because it's going to freeze too hard. You could do really anything in containers.
Even like potatoes in containers. Like if you
Yeah.
don't have the space to throw potatoes into your like in-ground garden, you can get like a grow bag and put your potatoes in there. You can put carrots in a grow bag.
Yep. My cousin has 10-gallon buckets. He's planting carrots in this spring.
I planted like peas and beans in buckets, like, and they just climbed up.
Yep.
I think the only thing I wouldn't plant in there would be corn.
Yeah, corn's a good one because you need so much of it to pollinate.
Yeah.
You do have to be careful about watering in containers, though. They're going to take a lot more water. Usually, if you're direct in the soil, once you plant it and you water it just once to kind of get it going, it's good for the season. But with containers, they need a lot more maintenance. You need to look after them a lot more.
And make sure that your containers have good drainage. So if it, does get a big rain, that they're not sitting in, a lot of water.
Yeah. One thing too with container gardening, and you can certainly do it, but like cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli, something like that. Like you can do it, but you're really only getting one harvest for such a small space and for so much maintenance. So if you go with a tomato, you go with a pepper, peas, snap beans, something you can get multiple harvests over is generally what I lean towards.
All right. Kim says, why is rosemary so difficult to grow?
I know. And it's, my background from working in commercial greenhouses as well. Like, it's hard to start from seed. It's hard to start from cuttings. It's probably just the family. It's just a hard plant to start. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, once it's established, like...
Yeah, once you have plants established, it's easier to take cuttings from them to start seeds. So once you have some, you can just take some cuttings just to spread it around the garden a little bit more.
Yeah. I've got a question here from Shirley. What are your thoughts on pole beans as opposed to bush beans?
Ooh.
It's a good one.
So if I were growing pole beans at home, actually we did last summer, we're doing it for the pollinators and the hummingbirds for the flowers. We're going to eat the beans too, but we're putting it in for the pollinators. If it were my choice, if I were sitting down and I had a choice between snap beans and pole beans to eat, I'm always going to snap beans.
Yeah, me too.
They're always coming up with so many new varieties of snap beans, and they're so freaking good. And I'm walking around the field in the summertime when I'm scouting and stuff, and I'm just eating handfuls of the beans, basically.
But I do think that, like, John prefers pole beans.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, it depends on which camp you are. Pole beans do take up quite a lot of space, though.
They do, and you typically have to trellis them too, or give them something to grow on.
Yeah, but they are still delicious.
Yeah. But like snap beans, like give me Lewis, give me Aldrin, give me like Gold Rush. I'm your man, you know?
So good. Um, Jeff wants to know, can I put my containers inside and outside?
You can put them inside and outside. If they're inside, you know they need enough light that they're going to grow. If you're putting them inside for the winter, it has to be a really stable environment that's cold, not too hot. That's a little bit harder to do. But yeah, certainly. And a lot of people do that when they're harding off like flower pots in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
They're bringing them inside and outside. Or if you know if there's a hard frost coming in spring, they're bringing
Yeah.
them in for the night, putting them back out. So you can certainly do that.
Remember when I grew all my peppers in pots in my driveway because I didn't have any space?
They look great.
When like Fiona came and the hurricane came, and anytime there was a lot of wind or rain coming, I just moved them inside, and when the threat is over, I just move them back outside.
Yep. That's what I do with my houseplants too. For 2 months in the summer, July and August, all my houseplants are outside.
Yeah,
Yep.
it makes it very versatile growing in containers because you can like move them around, and where you're getting sun in the spring doesn't necessarily match where you're getting full sun in the fall.
Yep.
So you can kind of move things around.
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany wants to know what a grow bag is. I wish we had one up here.
I know. So a grow bag is just like a fabric bag that you can easily put away after you're done growing in it. You can fill it up with soil, plant in it. Typically, potatoes do really well in them.
Mm-hmm.
They're really, really good if you don't have a lot of space and you want to grow on your patio, on your back deck, in your driveway. So they're perfect for it.
And all of the grow bags that we have here at Veseys, they are washable and reusable. So like you do buy one and they'll last you for years. And they're really good for aerating the roots. Let's see. How much time should you allow in between for an early and late planting of string beans?
Early and late planting of string beans. So if we're doing a spring planting, I would be reseeding every week for probably 3 weeks. I would give you, great harvests after like 60 days or so. And then for late harvests, I would be, if you're moving into late September for snap beans, you might be pushing it. The days start getting shorter, the nights start getting colder. If they're about 60 days to maturity, you want to plant them probably beginning of July. That would be the cutoff.
All right. And let's see. When should I start my pansies?
Start your pansies now. Start your pansies now. They love the cool. They can be out there second, third week in May. They'll love the cold.
Yeah.
Start them now.
Also, what is the best broccoli?
We have so many good broccoli.
Yeah.
So many good broccoli.
Luna was our biggest surprise this
Yeah,
year.
Luna was really good in the trials this year. It had nice heads. Like our early ones were a little bit smaller, but we had side shoots forming off the side, and we got 3 or 4 harvests off each plant at least.
Yeah, and the side shoots weren't small. They were almost as big as like the first head.
Yeah, so you were getting initial 1 head of broccoli, and then after that it was like having a sprouting broccoli for another like 2 or 3 weeks.
Right. Oh, it was very good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Newbies and gardeners can. Oh, let me see. What variety of flowers would be ideal for growing in pots indoors?
Indoors. So you don't want anything that's going to trail. You don't want anything that's going to get super, super big. Geraniums would be really good. I wouldn't recommend like easy weight petunias. They want like a hanging basket or container. They're going to take up a lot of room. And geraniums are like a kind of your grandmother's houseplant too. They're a really good one. Anything that's not going to get too big and is going to stay in its container.
We've got Gerber daisies growing in the store in containers, and like the blooms last so long.
They're just in our 6-inch pots, and actually one of the red ones has been down there flowering for like 3 weeks now. Yeah. The same bloom.
The same bloom, and there's got 2 of them on them. They just like keep blooming.
Yeah.
Shauna says, how do you grow, harvest, and dry baking beans for storage, and do you recommend certain varieties?
So all the baking beans we carry are really nice baking beans. I can never recommend one variety over the other because we do such extensive trialing, and everything we put in, we're making sure that it's the best of the best. So if it's in the catalog, we can recommend it.
Absolutely.
When it comes to planting baking beans and like growing and harvesting, they're going to grow throughout the season like any other bean, but the big thing is in the fall, they need that process to dry down. You want that plant to be entirely brown. You don't want to see any green left. Once it's done, you can pull the pods off. You can even let the pods maybe dry a little bit more if they're soft. And then once they're completely dry, go ahead and shell them, and then put them in a breathable bag, like a paper bag or something.
Okay. Oh, Joyce was she had like what, Jacob's cattle?
She had Jacob's cattle.
She made chili with it the other day because you use what you have,
Yep.
and they were very, very good.
Yeah, we grew baking beans a couple years ago home in our garden. We still have some left now.
Oh, right. Let's see. Sorry, I lost my page. What can you do with saffron? It seems to be popular now.
Oh, it's so popular.
Oh my God.
So I'm not much of a person who cooks, but the saffron is the little red filament that you harvest from inside the flower, which is the male part of the bloom. You harvest that. You want to make sure the flowers are dry before you harvest and after you harvest. Store in an airtight container. Yeah, maybe if you can maybe speak about cooking. I know you like dive deep into like the cooking and baking world.
You know, I've never actually cooked saffron, but like they're one of my favorites. Like we have them blooming here, and they're just gorgeous when they come up in fall.
Oh yeah, absolutely gorgeous.
And saffron, is it the most expensive herb? Is it a herb?
By weight, yep.
Yeah.
By weight.
Because you use so little of it.
I was at the grocery store this winter, and I saw it sitting on the shelf in a little glass jar, and I don't remember what the price was, but it wasn't cheap. It was like between $15 and $20 per like gram or whatever the unit was, and you got like 3 of those red filaments. Like, it was insane.
That's crazy. Back to what Tiffany was asking about grow bags. We actually got a grow bag here. So this is one of ours in the store, and you could easily put. You can see it's nice and big. They fold up. And what would you plant in this one? I would put what? 3 peppers, 2?
If they're small peppers, I would go with no more than 3. If they're small, like the sweetie mix ones, you could do 3. If you're going with a bell pepper, probably good with 2.
1. And you could even like put a tomato in here.
Mm-hmm.
You could do eggplant, kale.
Yeah.
This would really do anything. And the air is able to pass through here. So it's really healthy for the roots.
If you're a person that tends to overwater, or you live someplace like coastal BC where you get a lot of rain during the growing season, that would be perfect because this dries out much quicker than having a plastic or a porcelain pot.
Yeah, and these handles make it like very easy to move it around. Let's say we got a big rainstorm coming, you don't want your plants in it, just like pick it up and move it. It's very easy. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, and they are available in our local store. They're available on our website. We use them. They're great. Let's see. A question. Marram grasses available as well as bog plants. What would you plant in a bog? Maybe some irises?
Yeah, you could do some irises. Typically for sites like that, they're already established there for a reason, so I'm not going to try to introduce stuff into it that don't belong there.
Right.
You can get away with, plants that really like wet and acidic soils. Not that blueberries like really acidic soil or really wet soils, but they like really acidic soils. So you could plant some blueberries in there, some rhododendrons, that sort of thing.
Nice. How easy is it to grow grapes for a beginner?
They need a little more maintenance than, like planting garlic. You do have to watch them for the first few years. You have to cut them back really hard every fall. They are prone to getting some foliar pests. Birds love the fruit, so you got to be on top of it with the fruit. Like, go out there with bags and cover them. Like, you really got to watch them.
Those starlings and the cedar waxwings, like they could clean you out very quickly.
If you've ever driven by a winery, they just have gigantic nets that like look like they span for kilometers that just cover the entire field to keep the birds off them.
Yeah. Randy asks, what should I be planting indoors now to transfer outside later?
So it depends if flowers, herbs, or vegetables. So herbs, you could really start a lot of herbs now to plant outside, but like rosemary, thyme, like any of the woody one, or thyme's good for drexing, but like rosemary, basil, anything that gets woody you want to start now. Geraniums, petunias, begonias you can start now, vegetables, onions, leeks, celery.
Right. And maybe some like hot peppers, those really hot ones. Anything that's really hot is going to take a little bit longer in the field. It's still a little early for your sweet peppers, but yeah. I would grow the hot ones now. Question from Robin. Pelleted carrot seed is such a game changer. Will there ever be a wider range of carrot varieties available as pellets in the future?
So the thing with pelleted carrot seeds for us is that they arrive in-house with that pelleting on them. In order to do that pelleting, it's almost like you're dumping large batches of carrots into like a dryer that spins with, that's applying this clay coating to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're, like Napoli, we have like a pelleted Napoli, which is understandable because we sell so much of it. We have so
Yeah.
much of it that companies can easily pellet that. Whereas, if you take another carrot we don't sell as much as, they're not going to run that. It's just not worth it.
All
If you
right.
buy more carrot seed, we can make it worth it.
All right. Becca asks, what's your favorite type of carrot?
Oh, my favorite type of carrot. Well, for anyone who knows me, carrot is actually the one thing I don't like eating. But I eat them because I have to, and I can appreciate a carrot for a carrot.
I think Trials has changed you though, and you like carrots now.
Yes, yes. Napoli, I think, is the staple carrot. It is the sweetest of all the carrots that we have.
It's very sweet. Although that oxheart carrot is
They're really cool.
good. Like
Yeah.
I made a carrot cake with that, and they were very sweet. Really good for juicing and like an interesting shape, like a triangle.
Yep.
Um, Jeff wants to know what's the best garlic to plant for volume.
For volume, ooh, they all do really, really well. I would say there's no one better than the other. I would say music is probably pretty standard. Some of the purples are also standard. You can't go wrong with any of them.
All right. Let's see. Someone says birds know exactly when they're ripe. It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like with our Hass-caps. We really struggle to get any Hass-caps.
Oh, yeah.
Because like one day they're too tart and the next day they're gone.
Our Hass-caps are right next to our greenhouse. So, if we're commuting to and from the greenhouse, we're always watching for like the blueberries and the Hass-caps from when they're ready. And then there's one day you're walking up there and you see like the cedar waxwings fly out of there and you're like, they're ready, and we didn't get any.
We didn't get any. You might find one and it's still a little tart.
Yeah.
Should I start my zinnias indoors or plant directly? They're a zone 4.
Zone 4. If you're a zone 4, you might want to start them a little bit earlier. People that are in like our zone 5B6, you could, direct seed them and they would come fine. 4 might be pushing it, so, 3-4 weeks before your last frost starts on, you should be good to go.
I direct seeded some zinnias in my wildflower garden, and they probably started blooming like the very end of August. So they will bloom, but I think if you want them earlier in summer, you should probably plant them indoors.
Yep.
Let's see. All right, so we'll wait for some more questions to come in. What is your least favorite thing to grow?
I hate growing cauliflower. It's not because I hate cauliflower, it's because we live in a very dense agricultural province. And the pest pressure for cauliflower is just through the roof. Like, to try to keep anything off of them from eating them is just impossible. And the other thing is, too, like, the heads form so quick. So as soon as that head forms, if I'm not out there banding the leaves, then the head turns yellow. It's still fine to eat.
Right.
But, you want a white cauliflower. You don't want a yellow cauliflower.
I'll never forget the first time I grew cauliflower, and I was weeding a different part of the garden, and I was amazed at all the white butterflies that were around. And then I come to find out that they're not white butterflies, and they're the cabbage moths, and they were eating everything.
They were eating everything. They're a nemesis.
They're a nemesis, but like at first glance, they're beautiful.
I know. Yes.
My least favorite thing, I don't know what that would be. Beets, probably just because I don't like them. Although I struggle to grow radishes, even though they say they're a beginner. For some reason, every time I grow radishes, I just get nice healthy greens and no bulb.
Yeah, they don't like the heat. If there's a lot of heat, they're going to go to flower right away. So like beginning of May, direct seed them. End of August, direct seed them. They're not good to grow in the middle of summer.
All right, here's a question. How do you pest control Japanese beetle? They eat all my flowers, herbs, raspberries, and all types of plants.
Yes. So, I always say for pests, you can go with row covers, but it doesn't sound like that's an option here. It's just too much area, too big of plants. So your only other option is picking them off by hand or buying the Japanese beetle traps. We do carry them. They do work really well, but you just need to keep changing the lures and all that. You need to be on top of it.
Yeah.
And the other thing you can do too, you can go online to like your provincial jurisdiction who might look after that, and you can kind of report where they are in the area, and that just helps them monitor where they're spreading to.
Right, and if it's been a couple of years, they've probably established a little bit of a colony.
Yeah.
If they've moved into everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Once they're kind of there, and it's a lot of hands-on work to try to get rid of them.
All right, Jennifer has a question. Do you have a preference when it comes to treated versus untreated seed?
So if I'm growing home in my garden, it's either untreated or organic seed. For us here at Veseys in our trial fields, we take untreated, organic, or treated seed. And that's only because a lot of things that we're trialing are for external trials, so they don't have a lot of seed yet. And that's, all we can get is treated, so that's all we have to work with. So if it's at home, untreated, organic. If it's here, I'll take whatever you have, kind of thing.
Right, and unless you have a lot of disease in your soil or a lot of trouble germinating, it isn't always necessary to go with a treated seed in a small scale.
And I would say if you have a really wet clay soil, you're trying to push stuff as early as you can to plant them, then maybe treated's better for you. But otherwise, untreated's fine.
And is there any health risks or anything with planting a treated seed?
Nope. So, like any of the pesticides and stuff, you just want to make sure you're washing your hands, wearing gloves, all the proper PPE when you're handling it. But once the seed is in the soil and it germinates, any of that coating that's on the seed actually breaks down and essentially by the end of the season is non-existent.
It'll be washed away completely.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. All right. What is the best sunflower variety for long-lasting blooms?
Long-lasting blooms. So any of the branching varieties. The head ones are really nice and they get really big, but you wait 80 days, 90 days sometimes for a sunflower and you get a nice big head, and then the first rain, first wind, or they only last for a week and then that's it. Whereas the branching ones, you get that first initial head and then you get a whole bunch of nice little ones that come off as well, and they make really good cut flowers.
I find that the branching ones have a thicker stalk as well, just because they produce all those branches, so they do seem to stand up a little bit better to the wind.
Yeah, and on that too, if you're starting sunflowers as transplants, the heads and the stalks will almost always be smaller than if they're direct seeded, because I don't like that disturbance when you're transplanting them. So if you're direct seeding them, you're going to have a bigger flower head and a bigger stalk. Whereas if you're doing them as transplants, they won't be as big.
I have to transplant mine because I have cutworm problems and slug problems.
Yes,
and
we have that problem too at our house.
It's just too hard. I reseed, and I'm doing transplants.
Yeah.
But the Autumn Beauty Mix is probably my favorite because it's got the 5 different colors, branching, good varieties.
I'm a big fan of Burton Jr. I like them. They're just so squat and little, and then you get a nice little head. They're just perfect for borders.
Bert blew us away this summer.
Yeah.
Bert really blew us away. Shauna says, what are some flowers I can plant to attract hummingbirds?
Hummingbirds, anything that's strong scented, anything that the bees like. Sweet peas, morning glories, cosmos, zinnias, any of those are fine.
Crocosmia, that's a perennial.
Yeah, you could absolutely plant some of that.
And there's the one that I don't know how to pronounce, Nicotiana?
Nicotiana?
Nicotiana,
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
Yes.
Don't plant Nicotiana with your potatoes or your tomatoes, because they're in the same family, and the potato beetles that are on your potatoes will go to the Nicotiana and they will absolutely decimate them.
And if they're flowering first, they're going to draw in the bugs to go to your potatoes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plant them far away from potatoes.
But they're beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Jeff says, do you sell the perimeter wire that makes the noise that helps deter pests? Oh, that stuff. Remember we strung
the buzz-off tape.
The buzz-off
tape.
tape.
That stuff's really cool.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Highly recommended, just for pure enjoyment only. It does work for the birds, but I really like it too.
It was so much fun out in the field because we could hear it and it makes the craziest noises.
Yeah, it's just like a little thin nylon tape that's stretchable, almost like electrical tape, and you just stretch it between fence posts or something where it's not going to be obstructed when it's blowing in the wind, and then the wind catches it, and it sounds like it moves like a skipping rope, and then it sounds like there's a helicopter in the distance, and your head's right next to it, and you're like, there's a helicopter coming, and then you look up and it's just that noise. But the first initial sounds like there's a helicopter 30 feet above you.
Absolutely. It's funny because it made me want to go away, and I knew that it was not that. It's very loud, and it definitely works. It's probably one of our best things to deter the birds.
Yeah, we put it around our melon patch and our corn patch, and I didn't see any birds for the last couple of years using it. So.
Holly says, are there veggies that do not grow well in garden boxes?
Do not grow well? depends on how deep your garden box is. I would say root vegetables.
Yeah.
But even that, like radishes and beets would be fine. The things that wouldn't grow well are like carrots and parsnips.
And if you did have a short one, you could do like certain carrots, like the ox heart.
That you could do oxheart, you could do mokum, like a baby carrot, like those would be fine. But if you're expecting a full like 8-inch carrot or an 8-inch parsnip, it's got to be at least 10 inches deep to get that root.
Yeah. So depending on how deep your box is, and how wide it is, like if your box is only like 4 foot by 4 foot, you might not want to plant cauliflower in there because you're only going to get 6 or 7
Yep.
out of it. But I think everything really does well in containers.
Yeah, like again, like anything's transferable to container in the garden, just not things that you expect to overwinter, like perennials.
Yeah. Let's see. You have the buzz off tape. Does it work for geese?
I didn't see any geese. They were flying very far away from the field in the fall, so.
We did have geese across the road in our flowers, but like they leave our flowers alone. But we didn't have any geese in our vegetable garden at all.
No.
So maybe, but like.
I saw lots of bees flying overhead this fall, but I saw none landing, so.
Yeah. Could you use the buzz off tape for grapes to keep the birds away?
Could certainly try it. Like any of those products, I wouldn't guarantee it, but we have had good luck with it the past couple of years, so.
Yeah.
Maybe use that in conjunction with covering the fruit, just in case, so.
Yeah, and try other things too, because they can get brave.
Yeah.
And if you move the tape around so it's in different spots, kind of making a slightly different
If you're
noise.
really worried about having birds, or you do have the bird problem, in your grapes, scare-off balloons work really well too. We keep those in our pumpkin patches to keep the crows from pecking holes in the pumpkins, and those work really well.
Yeah. How do you get rid of earwigs?
How do you get rid of earwigs? That's the day-old question, isn't it? There is earwig traps that we sell. They're just like a little wooden, 10, 12 inches long. They have little narrow like slats in between them, and the earwigs crawl into them, but they can't back up. So they just kind of go in, and then they sit there and they're like, this is my life now. Yep.
Yeah, and you have to like dump those out on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, you have to dump those out. Deadheading too, they love to crawl into like dahlia blooms or like zinnia blooms. Like you could be going out to cut flowers and like touch one that just start pouring out, and they make that gross sound when they hit the ground, the clicking sound. So.
And they love lettuce.
Yes, they love to get into like the hard to reach areas that are like a little bit warm, but they're very dark.
The nooks and crannies.
Yes.
We covered our lettuce this year with row cover, and we didn't have any earwigs in our lettuce.
No.
Last year our lettuce was very full.
Yes, this year was much better for the earwigs. Yeah.
All right. That's it for questions there. Let's see. What are you most excited about? Oh, sorry. What is your most favorite flower?
See, there's so many different categories of flowers. There's like annuals and perennials and biennials and trees and shrubs. Like, which one do you choose? For perennial, I do like a good delphinium. I do like columbine.
Mm-hmm.
For annuals, man, I love zinnias. They just flower all summer, all different colors. They make good cut flowers.
That zinnia bed was so gorgeous all summer.
We just had one bed of just zinnias, and you could just go out and cut flowers for weeks.
Remember the Luna hibiscus? It bloomed for weeks on end.
Yeah, we had a Luna in our trials last summer. Started last winter, planted out last spring, and it flowered very early compared to the rest of the hibiscus we were trialing. So very happy with that.
My favorite flower is milkweed.
Yeah.
Just because, I love the butterflies. I really enjoyed the butterflies this year. We had a monarch actually, form a chrysalis on a hibiscus.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to, film him coming out.
I feel like that's part of gardening, too, is, not just the planting and harvesting and eating, but, kind of interacting with, Mother Nature a little bit as well. So, you can go out there and you can enjoy the milkweed flowers. You can smell them.
Mm-hmm.
But if we see, a monarch caterpillar there, we're, watching it every day. We're like, what are you doing, buddy? Where are you, buddy? We're keeping track.
It was Butterfly Watch 2023 last year.
Absolutely.
I checked on him every day. It was really fun. And even, just watching the bees on the sunflowers.
Yeah, it's great fun.
I really enjoy all that. Jennifer asks, would you recommend using diatomaceous earth to help with bugs?
Yep, absolutely. And it does really, really well for crawling bugs. Works really well with ants. I've tried it with earwigs a couple of times. I've had hit or miss with that. But if you got ants, you got slugs, anything like that, it works fine.
Yeah, and I find the thing with diatomaceous earth is that you do need to reapply after, it's been rain or a heavy dew. Once it gets wet, you really need to like reapply a fresh layer.
Yeah, it kind of like just clumps right up. Like if you take and get water on flour and just kind of clumps up, it's not really going to do what it's meant to do anymore when you're like baking.
Yeah, my aunt puts like diatomaceous earth around her foundation to prevent
Yep.
like the earwigs from coming in. And I was like, you need to reapply. And she was like, why? I was like, they're actually, you can see them crawling on it. Like, it's not doing anything to them anymore.
Yep, reapply.
What plants do toads like?
Do toads like? That's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever had that question before. I would say any that like shade, because I would think toads like it nice and cool and nice and damp. So anything that has a nice canopy and that can tolerate, part shade or full shade.
When we found the toads out in the trial fields, they were in the pumpkin patch.
Yep.
Yeah. Do they eat the leaves?
I don't think they'd eat the leaves, but they just like to hang out underneath the leaves, nice and cool. It's a little bit damp there in the fall, so.
Yeah, I don't know what toads eat. Someone wants to know which milkweed there are various. Do you mean the common milkweed? We have the butterfly flower. We have the swamp.
Mm-hmm.
They ate all of them.
They eat all of them.
Like our milkweed plants were almost completely stripped this year. We planted a bunch of varieties and they ate. There was just sticks left of some of them.
Yep. They like both of them. I think they typically go towards like the common and the swamp milkweed for like laying their eggs, but in terms of what they're going to eat anything that's in that genus.
Right. And it's just like the caterpillars that eat the milkweed. The butterflies themselves take the nectar from all sorts of flowers.
Yeah.
So like when you're planting milkweed for butterflies, it's for the caterpillars, and then you want other flowers there to support the butterfly when he emerges from his chrysalis.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Jeff wants to know, what is deadheading?
Deadheading is a process of removing dead or spent flowers off of a plant. Removing those, A, makes the plant look a lot better, and B, is going to produce more flowers.
Right.
Yeah. And that might be just as easy as using your thumb and like your index finger and you're just pinching like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're going with like little snips and just cutting them off.
Yeah.
Either or.
And then what do you do with the tops?
Compost them. Straight to compost them. Unless it's coming from a diseased plant.
Right.
Then it goes into municipal compost or garbage. I don't want that in my yard.
Yeah, and they recommend that you put that in waste, not your municipal compost.
Yes.
Because they don't want it to be reintroduced.
Yeah.
Tiffany wants to know if we sell any blue flowers other than hydrangea.
Other than hydrangea. I'm going through the list in my head. We have delphiniums off the top of my head. Flax. Forget-me-nots.
Irises.
That's all that's coming to my head right now.
And we have like annuals, like petunias. We got some blue.
Yeah,
ones,
and like sweet peas, like there's blues in the mixes, or like purpley blues in the mixes. Yeah, just have a flip through the catalog or the website, and you'll find stuff. You should be able to filter on our website too by flower color too. So if you go to the side, if you're clicking on like flower seeds, and then they bring up all the seeds, and on the left hand side you should see all the filters. You should be able to click on a flower color there.
Yeah, I do like blue flowers. Linda catches her earwigs and feeds them to her chickens. I bet
Perfect.
They love that.
I bet they do.
Let's see. What do you call the insect that chews the top of the beans as soon as they sprout, and what do you recommend?
That is cutworm.
Cutworm.
Good old cutworm. As soon as the beans pop through the soil, they just snap it off right at the base and timber. Yeah. They come out at night, so you're not going to catch them during the day.
No. Sometimes we try and like take a toilet paper rolls or paper towel rolls and cut them. And where you plant your seed, you can kind of put the roll around it so he can't really get to it. Mm-hmm. But they're...
You can throw down diatomaceous earth as long as it's not going to rain that night. They live pretty close to where the seeds are going to germinate. So you could do like right before you go to bed at night or right before the sun goes down, you could go out with like a insecticidal soap and just kind of like spray the plants and along the stems. Mm-hmm. And then that should handle them too.
Yeah, but if they are cutting them off and they cut those main two leaves, you're going to have to replant.
Start again. Your seeds are done.
Yeah, and maybe transplant them out.
Yeah, if you're having some troubles, maybe try transplanting them out.
Yeah, you'll just frustrate yourself.
Yeah.
Kelly says, hi, Cody and Tara. I'm growing geraniums for the first time. They germinated well, and now they're about 2 inches tall with several pairs of leaves. Wondering when I should transplant them into larger pots.
So it depends on how big your container is. What I'm doing, I have ours in our 28 or 128 cell trays. So every couple of days, I'm lifting those trays up. I'm waiting till I see roots coming out the bottom, and once I see the roots coming out the bottom, I give them maybe another week. Um, After that, you can kind of give the cells a little bit of squeeze and just gently pull them out and see what the root balls look like. You want a nice firm root ball, but you don't. But you want to be able to see soil. If it's all roots, then they're really root bound, and you really got to get them out of there.
Right, they start wrapping
But
around.
also, when you pull them out of the cell, all the soil should be coming with it. You shouldn't be leaving any soil in the cell as well.
Right. And is it, would it be bad to put them in a pot that was too big? So if you immediately move them into, say, the container they're going to live in outdoors, is there a problem doing that?
You can do that, but you have to be so careful with watering because you want the soil to dry out enough between watering so you can water them enough, feed them enough, but also them not get root rot. So it's better to start small. So, if you're getting a little 1x1 plant root ball, maybe put them into a 4-inch pot, a 6-inch pot, let them grow a little more. When they get to that same stage where they can be transplanted, then you can put them into like your 10 or your 12-inch container.
Nice. What is the best variety of small tomatoes to grow in a hanging basket?
In a hanging basket, I really like the little birdie ones.
They're so good.
Yeah, they come with yellow, pink, and red. You can grow them in like an 8-inch plant. So if you have a 10 or 12-inch hanging basket, you can plunk all three in and they'll grow fine. You can probably put upwards of even 5 in, I would say. There's a lot of soil in a 12-inch hanging basket. The other one I would recommend is Cherry Falls. Cherry Falls is, a great tomato.
I was waiting for you to say that. The one we grew last year in the trials, I mean, it had hundreds of flowers on it. It produced so many tomatoes, and they're delicious.
Yeah.
But they're just a little bit bigger than those little birdie ones.
Yeah, they're a little bit bigger, and you'll just get them all at once, and you're just gonna have a feast of tomatoes.
Right. Are we growing any new hanging basket tomatoes this year?
I can't comment.
No comments.
No comments.
Jeff wants to know how he can stop drowning his basil.
Stop drowning basil. Basil, you just got to cut back on the watering. But basil's also hard to if they get too wet, if they get too dry, they're not going to bounce back well. So you just got to watch it every day. When you notice the soil getting a little bit dry, before they wilt, give it a little bit of water, let them dry out again. Same process.
Something I like to do with my containers is I start lifting them up, and I was teaching this staff in the store, don't just water every day, lift up the plant. You can feel when it's heavy and it's full of water, and you can feel when it's just the top is wet, it's light, it doesn't have any weight.
And you can do that for your hanging baskets or any container too. Water them really well when you know they need it, and then give the pot a lift to kind of feel what it's like. And they're quite heavy when they soak up all that water.
Yeah.
But then start lifting it a day after, 2 days after, 3 days after, depending how big they are, and you'll feel how light they get, and you'll be able to tell between that and how light brown the soil is when they need water.
Yeah, in pots it's the best way. When you're doing trays, it's harder to gauge if they need water by their weight.
Yeah.
But it's a good habit to get into to start lifting your pots.
If you see me in the greenhouse, I'll be walking down the greenhouse going like this, lifting the hanging baskets, seeing which ones need which ones. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What are some things we should do to prepare for the planting season?
So obviously if you're doing early stuff, you want to have those ready now. They should be actively growing. The big thing I recommend to everyone, it doesn't matter if you're a veteran gardener, if you're a small gardener, big gardener, you just moved into a place, get a soil test done. They are not expensive. They will tell you what the makeup of your soil is. They'll tell you how many nutrients are in your soil and what percentage. They're not, like I said, they're not expensive. You can go on your provincial agriculture's website. They'll tell you how much it costs, where to send it, how to do it. That is one of the number one things I recommend.
And are they all done through the province?
No, there are some other places you can do soil tests through, but typically every province has that you can send them to. And if your province doesn't, I think most... a place like Guelph, you can send them to Guelph, and they do testing there at the university.
Right. One thing I would say to prepare for the season is wash all your things. Make sure
that's
that
a really good one
you
too.
wash your trays that you used last year to prevent any disease or pests from carrying over. If you're reusing your hanging baskets or your outdoor containers, wash everything before you start planting in it again. Even your tools, give them a nice good wash before you start for the season.
Yeah, and you have to be careful too washing stuff if you're using a very concentrated detergent, that can actually harm plant roots.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure it's either diluted really well or that you're rinsing everything super, super well.
Yeah, and Dawn dish soap is great to use.
Yeah, yeah.
How would you recommend planting the three sisters in rows? Can beans, squash be on the same trellis and the corn rows around them?
I wouldn't put beans and squash on the same trellis because the beans are really aggressive growing. They're just going to take over everything.
Mm-hmm.
So what I usually tell people for that is, beans grow on the corn and then the squash covers the soil surface. That helps retain some of the moisture and keeps the roots a little bit cooler during the height of summer.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that in rows, but you might have better luck if you did like a corn in the center. If you did like a circle garden or a rectangle, corn in the center, then you did like a one like line or around the perimeter of the corn of your beans, and then your squash around the outside.
Yeah. Tiffany wants to know if you can do strawberries in the grow bag.
Sure can.
Now, would you do perennial strawberries?
I wouldn't do perennials. I would do ever-bearing strawberries.
Yeah.
So we do have ever-bearing strawberries that we sell roots of, and then we also have ever-bearing types that we sell by seed.
Mm-hmm. And you could put the roots in there, but overwintering them would be a challenge.
Yes, it would be.
So if you just want them for one season, perfect. You might have to put them in the ground if you want to keep them for next season. Can you explain the steps to grow tomatoes and peppers? Germination pad and then grow light?
Sure. So when I'm doing our peppers and tomatoes, we're doing a heating mat underneath. You want to keep them at 21, 24 degrees. And then we're doing either your pot or your tray. And then I'm using a dome over all of that. While they're germinating, like I said earlier, you want to keep the soil really moist. Once I see about 50% germination, I take the dome off. I turn the heating mat off. Only if it's someplace with a stable temperature. If you're if you're in an older house close to a window that might be drafty, you may want to keep that on just for a little excess heat. But after that, you're letting them grow till they fill that root ball again. Then either putting them in their forever pot or you're up potting them, into a 6-inch pot to be then again transplanted after that in the summertime. Once you put them out in the summertime, you can put them quite a bit deeper on their stems than what
Just tomatoes though, not peppers.
Yeah, just tomatoes. You can do half or 2/3 of the stem underneath the soil. There's cells underneath the skin layer of the tomatoes that'll send out new roots everywhere, so you're going to get better yields and bigger plants. And then after that, it's just watching and harvesting and making sure there's no disease or pest showing up.
Yeah, I think we planted our tomatoes down like this deep. We
Yeah.
just left like a couple leaves on the top.
Yeah.
And
That's where that drill auger came in handy.
and our tomatoes have never been happier.
We had an awesome year for tomatoes.
Now here's something controversial. Do you top your tomatoes or do you not top, and peppers?
I'm the type of person that I plunk it in and I just let it do its thing.
Right.
And I kind of follow that at home as well, but also here, it's hard to recommend that everyone do that to their tomatoes because maybe not everyone will do that. So we just kind of plunk them in the soil here, we let them do their thing, and then we're like, that did really well, it didn't need to be topped. That one maybe is a variety that does need that. Maybe it's more of a commercial farm variety, so maybe that's not one we introduce.
All right. Which seeds don't keep for next year?
Onion seeds is a big one. Parsnip seeds are a big one. I don't think petunia seeds keep very well either. You might get 1 year, 2 years max. So yeah.
Definitely onion seeds.
Yeah, definitely onion seeds. One season, if you don't get them planted, they unfortunately don't hold to the next season.
What are some good pests and how do I attract them?
Good pests. So again, we're going back to pollinators. You want to have lots of wildflowers, anything that has lots of flowers. The fall sunflower is a really good one. It's a perennial. That's really big for beneficials. Calendula, echinacea. And if you want other good pests that aren't attracted to flowers, like spiders, frogs, that sort of thing, you could take some cinder blocks or some just pots you have laying around you're not using, put them on their sides in the garden, and then they kind of live inside there, or the spiders will make their webs on the outside and they're going to start hanging around catching bugs that come up. So yeah.
How do you track ladybugs?
How do you track ladybugs? Lots of pollinator flowers again. They will go after anything that has aphids on it. So if you start seeing aphids in your garden, they're probably there or they're soon going to show up.
Every time I see ladybugs on something, I get my magnifying glass out.
It's a good indication. It's a good indication. And on aphids too, if you see ants on your plants, I'm usually like, where are the aphids? Because ants will farm the aphids for their honeydew sap, and just they will actually help take care of them and let them grow better, basically.
Yeah, I hate aphids.
If you see ants, you might have aphids.
Yeah, there's a good chance.
Yeah.
Can I grow broccoli in a grow bag?
You sure can.
And
Absolutely.
how many heads of broccoli would you put in here?
I would do probably one plant because some broccoli will get really big. But again, if we're going back to container growing, I would put Luna in there because we had really nice offshoots. So you're getting that first initial head, and then you're getting like 2 extra weeks of side shoots.
Yeah, or a broccolini.
You can do a broccolini too. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All the side shoots. Let's see. How often would you recommend rotating your veg in your raised beds? And can you do a soil test and add what is needed?
Yep. So rotating crops, minimum is 3 years. You want to have your beds or your fields or containers on rotation. And yeah, you can do soil tests every year. It'll kind of tell you your nutrient levels in there. If you do like a soil test, maybe it's been, let's say, 4 years, for example, since you've had like a high feeder like tomatoes or peppers in your container. You notice after your soil test, there's lots of nitrogen in there, there's lots of potassium, like high levels, then maybe you can start introducing those again. Any fruiting crops require a lot of nutrients. So if your soil tests come back and say there's lots of that, then you can plunk those in. If there's not a lot of nutrients, then you go to something like a leaf lettuce or like a kale, something that doesn't flower and only going to produce leaves.
And how much organics, matter would you be adding to your beds every year?
So I would do at least a 1-inch layer every year, unless my soil is really poor and like heavy damp from like clay. I would be doing like 2 or 3 inches. But you also have to be careful if you're doing that in like vegetable gardens or even your flower beds. If you're adding too much year after year, too much nitrogen in the soil while you're fertilizing with like a perennial fertilizer, everything's going to look really lush and great, but nothing's going to flower.
Right, you're not going to have any fruit.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd have great spinach, though.
You have awesome spinach.
Your spinach would be amazing.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, I think we're all caught up for questions. Let's see. What concerns do we have going into spring that have happened through the winter?
So here we've had a lot of snow, and even in late winter now we've had a lot of rain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm crossing my fingers. I'm hoping that going into spring, we're going to have basically an early spring, where the soil is going to dry out a bit so we can get out earlier to work the soil. I'm afraid we have a weather station on the property. I've been kind of looking at the soil temperatures. The soil temperature hasn't really dropped to actually fully freeze yet, 3 inches underneath the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking pest pressures are still going to be high again this year. So
I think so. And we've had a lot of like freeze thaw. I don't think the ground got a really good
No,
deep
and it was
freeze.
quite mild up until the New Year. So any pests that might have been under leaf litter would be still living.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just got dumping of snow, which just insulated them, and then it got really cold. So they're still going to be hanging around.
I'm concerned about our bulbs because of the freeze thaw we've been having since November. It is every time it does that, it pushes the bulbs up a little bit more, and a lot of the spring bulbs we planted are basically sitting on the soil.
Yeah.
And we can't really do much about it. We could put a little bit more soil on it, but
This
then
is
if we
just
got
going to keep happening until like end of May. So
yeah,
Yeah.
an early spring would be nice though. We get those
an early spring
blooming.
is awesome. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What is the first plant you grew with success?
Ooh, with success. I'm trying to think now. I'm going back like 11 or 12 years ago now. I would have to say it was probably either like a cherry tomato or I had some vines I had just bought from a garden center. From seed though, I would have to say Hungarian wax peppers.
Peppers is it for me, and
Yeah.
we got the bug. Like me and my husband, we plant so many peppers. Peppers.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a potato farm, so I got like potatoes in my blood. But like for gardening, the planting bug really got me with peppers.
I can remember, my first few years of gardening, and I grew Hungarian wax peppers, and I remember eating them. Like, they're not very spicy. Realized I overwatered them. The next year, I was like, those weren't hot at all, so I'm taking a big jump. I'm going right to chili. Grew chili peppers, and I got my first red one, and I was like, this isn't gonna be hot. Like, I'm just gonna throw it in my mouth. It's gonna be fine. And I can remember standing in my kitchen, and I just took a bite, and then just instantly spit it out in the sink, and I was just hanging over the sink in pain. And my mom was like, "That was really stupid," and I was like, "It sure was."
Sure was.
Yep.
Oh,
I just needed to know.
it's one thing if you a well-watered hot pepper, you can wash the heat right out of it. We even had customers, say their pathfinders weren't hot at all, and
Yep.
they watered them every day, and you just wash the heat out.
Yep.
Like a really stressed pepper plant is going to be really hot, and that's why there's a Scoville range. The more stressed it is, the hotter that plant is going to be.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. Which native plants would you recommend to integrate near your veggie garden? How much space would you think if you were adding a meadow to attract pollinators?
So if we're talking like milkweed, for example, the bigger the better. The monarchs can show up and you might have one or two plants and then they could just decimate those plants, which is a good thing, which is what you want. But now those plants are so stressed, they might not rebound the next year. They might die through the winter. So if you're doing milkweed, plant as much as you can and as much as in as big of an area as possible. The same with you if you're doing like purple coneflower. Lupin's not native, but if you're doing lupins, again, just have a nice naturalized area for them.
Yeah, and I think the traditions of gardens is changing from like when we grew up, when everyone grew like one long rectangle garden in rows. They're definitely becoming more fluid and less uniform. People are commingling flowers in with their vegetables.
Yeah, it's
more.
a lot more permaculture now where it's like growing alongside of nature, forest gardening, that sort of thing, having strips or even like large clumps of wildflowers in your orchards, like that sort of thing.
And those big rectangle gardens, there's so many weeds. Like, you're gonna spend so much time weeding those.
I can appreciate it. It looks really, really good, but there is so much maintenance that goes into it.
Like Darla's garden is like pristine.
Oh yeah, but they look gorgeous. That's why they made the cover of the catalog last year.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is why she made it. Do you have a favorite wildflower blend?
Feed the bee or bee feed mix is my favorite. Yep.
Mine
And the
would be
monarch and the butterfly mix is my other favorite.
The monarch mix. The candy tuft in it last year, and I had the what are they called? Gaillardias right at the end of the season. So I can't wait for them to come back. I really like planting that because most of it is perennials. There was a few annuals to give you some pop of color, but even like the cosmos are going to self-seed and come back this year. So I'm looking forward to see how that looks this year.
And we're trialing more wildflowers, so like again, stay tuned next year or two. Show me some new ones there.
We have a big spot for that wildflower patch.
We sure do. It's going to look awesome this summer.
When are we planting it? Are we going to wait till after frost?
I'm going to do probably the last week in May, so a week before our last frost. So that gives time for the seeds to get out there, a good rain to start the germination process, but nothing's breaking through the soil surface yet until after that last frost date.
Yeah. We're really lucky here where we go from like frost to heat wave in like 2 days.
Yes, yeah.
All right. My corn has black and white fungus the last 2 years. Is it caused by a soil problem?
No, that's a moisture thing, and that's actually called smut. And it's actually like a delicacy. A lot of people eat that, so if you find that, a lot of people love to eat it.
Are we going to be trialing that next year?
If we could find some inoculant of it, I would love to try it, but like I think we're like, it's going to be hard to try to get that here, I think.
I'm not sure if everybody knows what we do in the trial gardens. Like, we grow lots of varieties that we don't have in the catalog to find new catalog items. And part of our job is to eat every single one of them.
Everything we grow.
And we test, the sugars. We're dropping carrots to make sure they're strong. We're testing the tops.
We grow about 2 acres of vegetables every year. And last year we grew somewhere between 700 and 800 varieties between all the major crops in our catalog.
And how much food do we donate to the food banks and charities? Was it like 6,000 pounds?
I was going to say thousands of pounds.
And that doesn't include the staff.
No.
So we definitely have probably the best job.
We make sure none of our produce goes to waste. So like we always offer it to staff. Trial staff gets to take some home, and then whatever's left usually ends up being donated then.
Yeah, to community fridges, different community organizations. And anything that is too far gone, we throw in our compost pile and we turn it into compost, so nothing is going to
And there was
waste.
only one thing last year we ended up throwing in the compost pile, and that was due to pests. So,
what was it?
Our first planting of lettuce.
Oh yeah, we threw that out.
Yeah.
I remember the year before we put our brassicas in there because of the club roots.
Yes.
When would you recommend to prune raspberry bushes, and how far apart should they be from other berry bushes like blueberries?
they are going to travel like rhizomes and runners underneath the soil surface. So you might not want to have them right next to your blueberries. You might want to have them maybe like 5 or 6 feet apart. Trim them. You want to remove the canes after they're done producing fruit and flowering that year.
Mm-hmm.
So the ones that produce fruit the same year, you're cutting those off at the soil level. Because the new ones that don't produce the flowers are the ones that are going to produce fruit the following year. So if you do that right after they're done like yielding, then you don't have the question in the fall or in the winter or next spring which ones were the ones that were flowering. I don't remember.
Yeah, marking them. I remember as a kid growing up, my aunt's raspberry patch was so overgrown. You couldn't even like harvest the raspberries in the middle because it was too much to even get through.
Yeah, yeah.
Making strips of raspberries, kind of like you see in a winery, how they do that. Definitely better. Let's see. Oh, remember water source for insects and birds, of course. Rocks and branches for bees and butterflies. We actually got our grounds certified by the Canadian Wildlife Federation as a habitat-friendly place, and we are now a monarch way station.
Yeah. We had milkweed in our large display bed last summer, and as we were cleaning out some of the annuals, you're like, you know what? We're going to leave those there, and they're just going to kind of do their things for the next few years. So we're going to see how big that milkweed patch can be.
Yeah, and I took a lot of those pods home.
Yeah.
And I was like sprinkling them like a fairy. I'm not sure how the city's going to feel about all the milkweed that I spread around.
No, they're just going to deal with it.
Right?
Yeah.
Butterflies are way more important.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference to use mulch in small veggie beds? If so, what kind of mulch would you suggest as opposed to hay mixes that contain a lot of seeds?
So you could do an undyed mulch, so a natural bark mulch would be the best thing. People like black or they like the red. That's more for ornamental purposes. They're not necessary. They don't aid in anything with the plants other than they just look really clean and sharp. So an undyed bark mulch would be best.
And what about biomulch?
Yeah, you could use biomulch as well. That works really well for like peppers, tomatoes, watermelons, anything that's a fruiting crop. And that requires a lot of heat and a lot of water. So that helps, keep the soil nice and warm where the roots are. And it also helps in like a 4-foot width keep any moisture that's in the soil there just for the plant.
One of my favorite products we have is a biomulch that has like holes you can punch out.
Yes.
And I did sunflowers in that. And I put one sunflower in every hole. And because of the mulch, it kept all the weed pressure down. So I literally just had sunflowers come up and I didn't have to spend any time weeding. And it looked really good and they love the heat.
And if you got like a little strip garden that you want to put in kind of thing, like it doesn't have to be for tomatoes and peppers and stuff. Like you can put a lot of stuff in there. If you're doing like cabbages or broccoli, cauliflower, like you can put it down even earlier than when you would normally put out those things because it's going to keep the soil a lot warmer.
And is there anything like organically that you would plant as like a cover?
You could do like a straw, but again, those have lots of seeds in them. There's the bark mulch.
What about like a buckwheat, like a plant?
Yeah, you could do that as like a green cover crop. You'll want to mow it when the plants are still quite young, like maybe 8 inches tall. Do not let buckwheat go to flower. You will be fighting buckwheat for the rest of your life.
That's when buckwheat becomes buckweed.
Yes. If you thought goatweed was bad, buckwheat is up there once it reseeds in your soil. Like
lamb's quarter. It's lamb's quarter for me. Like
yeah.
If we could turn lamb's quarter into like a spinach, like if it was delicious to eat.
Yes.
Like.
Yeah.
Jennifer wants to know, can you explain the best way to go about growing creeping thyme to cover a lawn? This is a good one.
It is a good one. So creeping thyme is best direct sown. You'll want to go out and if you have some bare patches or wherever you want to put it, sow your seeds, throw it down there, throw down a little bit of topsoil over top of that, take a hard rake or a fan rake and just kind of, lightly run it across it just to make sure the seeds are getting good contact with the soil. Water it really well and then just kind of keep an eye on it and make sure it's going to be growing well.
And to have the most success, you should be starting it inside and transplanting it out.
Yeah, you can do that as well. If you have like a smaller area, you can start them inside as transplants and then just, dig a nice hole and plunk the whole plant in there and it'll, eventually over the years it'll, start to naturalize.
Yeah. I love my thyme in my yard. I would, my whole lawn is mostly creeping Charlie and the thyme, and I love it. Some people hate it. There's really only two camps. You either love it or you absolutely hate it, but it's so good for the bees, and it's beautiful when your lawn is purple.
Yeah, it's nice when you walk through it too and you get that scent and you're like, what is that? And then you're like, oh, there's thyme.
with the thyme and then the creeping Charlie, because it's almost like minty,
Mhm.
like it's a really nice combination.
Yeah.
I really like my yard. Well, we have gone 15 minutes over. Everyone had so
Wow.
many good questions.
I didn't even think that was an hour yet. I was ready to keep going.
That was, I mean, we'll wait to see if anyone has another question, but I think this was a really good session.
Absolutely.
Yay! All right. Well, I think we're going to try and do this again.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We are going to have this uploaded onto our Facebook page. We're also going to upload it onto our YouTube page for anyone who wants to watch it back, or you want to tell your friends to watch it. And then tune in next time and you can ask us more questions.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.